Just imagine you've dropped your child or children who are toddlers to school, and a few hours later you hear on the radio, on the local radio, that the authorities have rescued and arrested a group of adults at the airport about to board a plane with 103 children from your toddler's school. Then when you call or rush to the school, you are greeted by the local authorities who inform you that your child was among the group of children about to leave the country by boarding a plane to fly to another continent. Now stop imagining, because this is the horribly surreal story that parents in Chad experienced in October of 2007 when a charity attempted to kidnap 103 children they claimed were orphans from the neighboring Darfur region in Chad. However, the reality was these babies were neither orphans nor Sudanese from the Darfur region. And throughout this story, I want you to keep in mind that we are talking about a large group of children who were mostly aged between 3 to 5, which included 21 girls and 82 boys, and the youngest child among the group was 1 year old, and the oldest was 10. Look, in this story, without mentioning them, we will tackle many different themes such as consent, human trafficking, colonial borders, diplomatic pressure, lies and deception, the white savior complex, and more. So please add to the list in the comment section. Now, the story began in 2004 when a couple decided to create a charitable organization called L'Arche de Zoé. And when translated to English, it means Zoe's Ark. And one of their mission was to launch an operation to evacuate orphan children from the Darfur region in Chad to safety, where we'll get to that in a moment. You see, the newly created organization multiplied calls for financial assistance from the public, and like most Western charities operating on the African continent, they made sure to play on the European public's emotion. Si vous ne faites rien, ces enfants vont mourir. Therefore, decent human beings and families looking for the opportunity to adopt children made it rain on the ark. And speaking of the rain, 2004 was a year when I felt like human empathy and solidarity touched the sky. It was a year when all decent human beings on this earth, those who usually hide in the shades of humility, emerged like sun rays, like the rays of the sunshine out of the darkness. However, as per custom, their bright presence also casts shadows that attract international con artists, i.e., the various reports of billions of dollars of the tsunami aid that disappeared following the devastating event, the tsunami in 2004, that mostly destroyed and claimed many lives in several Asian countries. Although some countries on the African continent, such as Kenya, Somalia, Tanzania, and more were affected, but not on the same scale as Asian countries. But back to the story. Look, the safety place where children were supposed to be evacuated to was La France. In fact, some of the French and Belgian individuals who donated to the organization had already made all necessary arrangements to welcome children, painted room, bought toys, and all furniture. Because you see, this organization was addressing a problem that many parents trying to adopt were facing in France and Belgium. These guys were offering a fast service with zero bureaucracy, bypassing every single challenges people looking to adopt children may have faced in the past. However, there was just a small detail both parties were overlooking on top of all the potential serious risk they could have exposed these children to. You see, the tiny tip of the iceberg was Chad and Sudan had bans or severe restriction on inter-country adoption to prevent human trafficking and other risks. You see, I don't even know if it's still the case in Sudan, but what I know is that in Chad, it is still the law. So, they had zero knowledge of that, but zero knowledge of the law, but they didn't care. So members of the organization traveled to Chad, and once there, the crazy part is they began operating as Children Rescue, which is a completely different organization compared to what they started with. And under that umbrella, they even received logistical support to set up their refugee camp, from the French army, who apparently did not know what these guys were doing in Chad. I mean, which is crazy to me. So they provided assistance to this organization without knowing what these guys were doing, which is a bit strange. Anyways, there was once a doctor who was not related to their organization but visited their camp. She quickly said she realized that most of the children were from Chad, not Sudan, plus that all of them were physically and psychologically in good health. But she noticed that they were unhappy and cried a lot while verbally expressing that they were missing their families. But here's the punchline. She said when she confronted the organization about the reasons why the children were crying, she was told the children were unhappy because they were in Africa. Now fast forward to October 25, 2007, when 17 European nationals, including pilots, nurses, journalists, and members of the organization, were arrested in the eastern part of the country at the Abéché airport while getting ready to board the 103 healthy children covered with fake bandages on a plane, a Boeing 757, which they rented for nefarious reasons. And that plane was expected to land in France on the same day at the Vatry airport. And before that day, I never knew that you could actually rent a whole plane. Well, maybe because I do not have rental plane money yet. Anyways, the eastern part of Chad is bordering Sudan, and usually with African countries that share borders people, especially in rural area, tends to just cross. You often find that some communities, they share the same language, the same culture, but are divided by colonial borders. And that is one of the many challenges the African continent will have to address in order to move forward. And you add to that the fact that still today, in most rural African countries, children are still allowed to be children. I mean, you can find children playing by themselves in the streets. They are still allowed to explore their city and villages without adult supervision because the space is created for them to be children, and that's my lived experience. So I suspect they probably saw the group of children playing outside and they just kidnapped them. You see, this speaks to a wider issue, whereas Africans, we are seen as a people to be managed, not to work with as partners, but as a people to be told what to do. And you see, this attitude takes away Africa's agency to choose. It undermines African countries' ability to make decisions and act in their own best interest. You see, and whenever an African country doesn't follow the script, it is quickly ostracized, threatened with sanctions, suffers from bad press, and in many cases, African leaders who are tempted to bet on Africa by working to improve the African experience for Africans, those at home and abroad, their lives were cut short. There are plenty of examples, and all that was with the blessings of foreign countries. But is that a valid reason to stop trying to improve the African experience or change the narrative? Of course not. Now, when this story blew up, the acting president at the time, Idriss Déby, was very vocal about it, with declarations such as, and I quote, "Is it to sell them or to and remove their organs?" Question marks. Now, as a result of that incident, 6 French nationals were sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Chadian prison for attempting to kidnap Chadian children. However, it seems that the French president at the time, the one and only Nicolas Sarkozy, the man behind the Libyan invasion, I guess he must have twisted the arm of his Chadian counterpart so much that he folded like a deck of cards. First, these prisoners were handed back to France where the crime was not committed, and then he pardoned them. But I guess due to the bad press that France received, they opened the case against that organization. But as you can imagine, not much justice was served. But above all, the couple who created that organization, they never showed up in court, and it was said that they had relocated to South Africa. However, this begs the question, who vets and check what happened within these refugee camps? Because it seems to me that nowadays anybody with a little bit of money and clout on social media can set up their own village or refugee camp, put in place their own rules, and then use the people within those camps as cash cows online to make money to fund their lifestyle. I have not mentioned any name, but I think some of the people out here are questionable individuals who claim to do one thing, but on the ground they do the opposite.
We, ni nini?